Welcome to a tutorial video on HTML basics. In this video I'm going to talk about links. So we've talked about in previous videos attributes. Those are things that go inside an opening tag that describe it or give it information. We discussed in a previous video the ID and class attributes. The ID being a unique identifier that's given to a tag to identify that element within the larger HTML document. Well, here I have the A tag within HTML. In fact, I have two examples of this, lines 13 through 15 and lines 16 through 18. In this case, though, they are two different hyperlinks. Notice the attribute within the A tag is a hyperreference. href is the abbreviation for hyperreference. So we have reading left to right a hyperreference. This is purposeful. The design of this is read this certain way. So it is read as a hyperreference. And remember, of course, that HTML stands for Hyper-Text Markup Language. And we discussed in a previous video how we mark up this language by adding tags to it. Where the hypertext and hyperreference part come between how we connect documents within a network of them. So we use a hyperreference to connect one document to another. Both documents are hypertext because they contain hyperreferences. So this right here, an example on line 13, is a hyperreference. It is one of two different ways of describing locations of things. You may have heard the term URL, a uniform resource location. There's two different main types. There is an absolute location and a relative location. This first example, lines 13 through 15 here, is a hyperreference to an absolute location. An absolute link or an absolute URL has its protocol. This is an HTTP : The : tells the web browser and tells us as developers looking at this code that it is a protocol of some sort. It is a : In this case, we don't necessarily have to care what it means, but then we have a website. So this is an absolute link. It has a protocol and then a location. So if we click that link, we go to Google. And let's hop over to a web browser to see that. So we're looking at example 1, and we see the same code we've been looking at across these. We have an H1, we have an H2, and we have some paragraphs of text. Right here, it says this is an absolute link, and if I click on it, it sends me to Google. If I go back, we can get back to that document. So from using the A tag and giving a value to its hyperreference attribute, we can then move between documents, move between hypertext documents using a hyperreference. The other type of link I described is a relative link. So an absolute link uses a protocol of some sort, and we don't necessarily have to care what the protocol means or what it does, but it's a : something. A relative link usually refers to files either within the current folder of directory or a folder directory one back, or relative to the current location. In this case, I have a file example2.html. It's in the same folder or directory. So I don't have to use an absolute location for it. I can just use its name. And we'll see if I come back to this code, if I click this is a relative link, it sends me to example2. Notice it says example2 in the HTML art here and the URL for this place. This is the URL for example2. If I click it back, we go back to example1. The reason that happens is that I listed example2 in this document. In example2, I listed example. And so we can move back and forth using a relative path or just using the file name because it's in the same folder or directory. So as a review, we use the A tag within HTML to build a hyperreference. We set its hyperreference attribute to its URL we want that link to point to. We can use an absolute URL or an absolute link by using its protocol. It's something and then : and then a location. In this example, it's google.com. We can use a relative link or a relative URL by using its file name and a relative location, in this case they're in the same folder or directory, to point to another file, and then we can move between them by clicking the links. As I described, using hyperreferences, we're building hypertext documents, and that's part of HTML. It is a hypertext markup language. And we've been using markup, using tags, to change things, and we've been writing code in this language. Finally here, we're pulling this all together and adding hyperreferences and adding markup and programming in language to fully use HTML. Again, using the two different types of URLs, absolute or relative, to refer to documents either relative that are local to it, something in the same folder or directory, or in a relative close place, and an absolute location, something that is usually defined in a protocol and is usually outside the folder directory or outside that server or in another farther place. Thanks for watching.